Hey, I'm Nate Wakeford, your masculinity mindset coach. We've got our weekly group coaching sessions. I'm going to be starting off with a discussion on masculine frame. And actually, I'm going to be addressing one of the questions that was brought up by a member of our group. And his question goes, do you seek validation from external sources? Are you afraid to disappoint others? Are you comfortable with the feeling of rejection? Are you capable of standing on something you believe in when your entire surroundings are against you? Are you capable of standing your ground in conflict with pure control over yourself? And so I'm going to address that question, and then I'm going to go into the breakthrough session in the second half of this call. Thanks for those who are watching, and thanks for those in the call. So let's start. There's actually a bunch of questions in this one question. Carl, did you have a question?
Oh, no, I'm just
Oh, good.
stretching a little bit.
All right. So let's jump in. So, do you seek validation from external sources? So the foundation of seeking validation externally is something that I call having an external reference. When you're externally referenced, it means you believe that you don't have what you need inside of you, so you have to seek this, whatever you're denying in yourself, externally, because you don't feel it's available within yourself. And this has to do with essentially being trapped in an immature stage of development. So when a baby is born to a mother, the baby is one and the mother are one. They are literally merged. And then in the baby's consciousness, it associates its well-being, rightly so, with provision from the mother. And so unless the child is separated from the mother, unless the child acknowledges its sovereignty, and unless the child becomes aware that it has to provide for itself in terms of its emotional requirements later on in life, obviously, when it's a child, it stays a child, but I'm talking from about the age of, say, 8 years old and onwards, the child has a degree of independence and the child needs to start to learn how to provide and self-source, provide for self emotionally and also from ideas of having attention and having acceptance. It needs to develop self-acceptance, self-awareness, self-acknowledgement. Now, to the extent to which that developmental stage happens, the stronger the identity will be in the child, where the child has self-awareness, and what the child needs to thrive. And especially if the child has been provided what it needs in its developmental stages, then it won't be experiencing life through a deficit or the idea that it's lacking something. See, if the child, for instance, has had inconsistent attention, inconsistent affection, inconsistent love, the child will begin to often consider that there's something wrong with the child, and that's why it hasn't got what it needs to thrive. Now, the way it compensates that, and that's actually shame. The way the child will compensate is it'll increasingly pursue that externally because there's a hole, there's something missing inside, and the child wants to feel better about himself. So by reaching externally, you get a temporary reprieve. But actually, over the long term, the only way that a child can move beyond this lack of love and the external validation seeking, external approval and acceptance seeking, is to heal the underlying root cause, which typically is this trauma or childhood wound, this trauma in childhood, in childhood wound, that such that when the child feels complete and whole, when it recognizes that the child can give itself love, then the motivation to reach for that externally diminishes. So this is where little boy, little girl meditations are so important. With the child, where you go back to the child within, and we all have this child inside of ourselves. It's important to go back to the child and give the child what it needed when that resource wasn't there. And in doing so, the child matures and grows up having received what it needs. And so therefore there's less compulsion to seek externally. The first stage as an adult, however, when we're here, is to recognize the pattern. And the unfortunate part is when we reach externally for some aspect we're denying within ourselves, we give our power to that external source. So when we think that we're not lovable and then love is something that has to be given to us by someone external, then us seeking that love externally places the power of provision of love in that external source, right? So when we place that external love outside of ourselves, when we no longer remember or recognize we can give that love to ourselves, that placing of our love externally places the power outside of ourselves, which creates an unstable equilibrium. Why? It's volatile because at any moment that love can be taken away or provided at the whim of that external source. So the more intensely we seek externally, the more vulnerable we are to our environment. The more that we build a relationship with ourselves, the more that we cultivate love through self-care within, through discipline, through integrity with the self, the more resilience we build to those external influences. Now, if we have placed a high degree of love externally to ourselves, almost inevitably, at some point in time, we will attract a situation or a circumstance where that love is taken away. In part, and that's if, for instance, if we have a romantic partner and we project that they are the source of our love and not ourselves, more than likely that love will be taken away from ourselves. Why? Because we don't believe the love's within ourselves to begin with, so we won't be a resonant fit over a long term. That's the first part. The second thing is, it's the only way that we can be taught. It's the only way that we can have a catalyst to bring ourselves back to ourselves, to bring ourselves back to the love within. Because when love is taken from us through a relationship breakup, really what needs to happen is we need to bring our awareness back to ourselves as a source of love. So the extent to which we're attached to something external, that attachment causes suffering. The extent to which we recognize that love within is the extent to which we have a continuity of love. See, the love that we have within can never be taken away from ourselves because whilst we're living, because we can always give it to ourselves. We always have love available. There's never a time that love's not available within ourselves. And in fact, even in this moment, for a second, whatever you're feeling, whatever's alive in you, just bathe yourself in some of your own love for a second, like literally right now in this moment. Just feel your heart. Imagine just building a sense of love within your chest. To give it a color. And you'll notice just by bringing your awareness to love and amplifying the love within you, you have the ability to create it within yourself anytime, in any moment. It's a fundamental element of becoming sovereign, is remembering your ability to cultivate love within always. Always. Doesn't matter what conversation you've been having with another, with yourself. The moment you switch your awareness to the realization of love within yourself, the quicker you'll calibrate towards that love, the quicker you'll recognize that you can experience love anytime you want. Same goes for joy, same goes with any emotion. It's really a product of wherever you direct your attention, in your focus, your posture, and whatever you're telling yourself that's reinforcing of what you're focusing on. So you're focusing on with positive affirmations of yourself being deserving of love, of having the capacity to experience deep love, powerful love within yourself. You cultivate it within, you experience it and express it. It teaches you that you have that capacity within yourself at all times. So a fundamental aspect of having masculine frame is having an internal frame of authority and an internal frame of reference. You reference, you self-source, you reference from within. So this plays into the next question that part was there. Are you afraid to disappoint others? Well, that comes from external referencing. If you think that something external is the source of love, then you are not going to risk losing that love. So you become compliant. So you'll avoid speaking your truth for fear you might offend or disappoint or have that love removed in some capacity because you've associated that love with being outside of yourself. So this idea of compromising your truth, not being willing to speak directly for what is in alignment with your truth, for fear of loss of that love, is again placing your power outside of yourself, and something that you makes you weaker in your frame. So you always have to bring the sense of cultivation of love back to self. And you can't fear speaking your truth, because the more concessions you make, the more that you'll erode trust with yourself. So the more concessions you make, the more that you'll erode trust with yourself, because you're living out of integrity with yourself. You're living out of alignment. Are you comfortable with the feeling of rejection? You won't fear rejection, and this is another external referencing question. You won't fear rejection when you accept yourself. So when you've cultivated a deep self-acceptance, a deep self-love, a deep disciplined self-care, developing respect for yourself, building trust with yourself, with integrous alignment in right action, with what brings you happiness and well-being, you don't fear someone else's rejection, because you'll never reject yourself. You're like, they may accept me, they may not, but I'm never going to leave, abandon, or reject myself. I've chosen to accept myself and to build myself up into the best version of myself. So rejection, again, relates to the removal of love, right? But again, if you're not willing to remove your own love, then you don't have to fear rejection from another. You just invite the next reflection of love towards yourself. Are you capable of standing on something you believe when your entire surroundings are against you? Yeah, well, this again is an external reference. These are all beautiful questions, little subsets. When you do not hold strong your identity, what you stand for, what you believe in, what you're committed to, if that's easily changed and that's easily varied, then you don't have a strong sense of self.